The regulator of the power sector, the Nigeria Electricity Regulatory Commission, the NERC, recently sanctioned 8 DisCos, 8 distribution companies, for failing to adhere to the monthly energy caps imposed on estimated billing for unmetered customers. So we understand that they're not supposed to go above a certain cap every month for customers that have not yet been metered. We understand that some of these DisCos include the Abuja DisCo, the Ikeja Electric Distribution Company, Eko Electricity Distribution Company, Enugu, Jos, Kaduna, Kano, and Yola Electricity Distribution Companies. These are the airing DisCos. But what does this mean? And what does it also mean for the consumers? So what does it mean for the DisCos on the one hand, and what does it mean for the consumers as well? We're being joined this morning by Mr. Ayodele Oni, who's an energy expert. You're welcome to Sunrise Daily. It's good to see you.
Good morning. Thank you very much for having me.
So, Mr. Oni, can you tell us what your own reading of this is? Because we hear about this monthly cap that DisCos are not supposed to go above for unmetered customers. Is it that, you know, what exactly should it mean, really?
Okay, so first, we need to understand what estimated billing is. Estimated billing means that the DisCo estimates your power usage and then issues a bill. Now, with respect to capping estimated billing, we didn't just get there in 2020 or 2025. We had a number of regulations and orders between 2007 and 2012. In 2012, we had one with a methodology for estimating billing, but that didn't succeed as much because you had challenges with metering even the feeders and the transformers. So the NERC rethought that arrangement, and then in 20, that capping. What it does do is cap the number of kilowatt hours, yield per kilowatt hour. So it caps the kilowatt hour by the business units and those feeders in those areas. And it's such that, I still think it could be a bit of challenge because the DisCos then may abandon an area and still are able to charge that amount. But what estimated billing is they estimate what they think you've used and then charge you. But it's now capped. We can't do more than a particular a kilowatt hours a month. That's what it is now.
In spite of how much electricity, this is despite how much electricity is supplied to those particular feeders per month. Is that correct?
Yes. It's regardless of what is supplied. Yes,
so the idea it will be that it should be an incentive for the DisCos to meter their customers as quickly as possible and not rely on estimated billing. Would that be correct?
Yeah, that's the idea. That is to ensure that metering takes effect very quickly, because less than half of my understanding is that less than half of the customers have meters. Have working meters. You estimate when you do not have meters, you have a damaged meter, or you can't get into the premises to adequately meter. Those are the circumstances. But it's also fair that NERC has then asked them to credit those customers apart from the fine. I think that makes it even more interesting to consumers and more useful to the consumers.
Yeah, I was just about to say that because we see that the telecom regulator also does this fine from time to time. People say, oh, hold on, you find them, how does it benefit us? Is it just for your own pocket? But in this instance, they're being asked to be credited. How do they follow through to ensure that these directives that they have given or these punishments that they have given to the DisCos are followed through?
Okay, so usually prior to this time, that's where the cookie goes, where you have strong regulations, but you do not see through the process. I think NERC does much better now in terms of enforcement and monitoring. There are reportorial obligations. DisCos are supposed to provide certain information periodically to NERC. And with that, they're able to estimate, they're able to determine who is doing what they ought to and what they ought not to. I think there's stronger enforcement now. It can be a bit slow. That's why we're going back to 2024, but it's more better. And they're supposed to report to NERC when all of these are done. So I think enforcement is much stronger, and we seem to make some progress in that respect.
What exactly is the challenge with metering? Because here we are still talking about estimated billings. How many years after? We've seen minister in, minister out, come up with different plans to see how they can get many Nigerians metered. And still, it's still a situation whereby a lot of Nigerians are still either paying for the meters if they need one or are unable to get these meters. What exactly is the challenge, given that we've also been able to set up a number of metering companies here in Nigeria?
Okay, the challenge largely is historical. If you had only 20% of your people metered, or much less than 50%, say 35 to 40% of your people metered, amongst those who were metered, the meters are no longer good quality meters. It will take you time. Recall that government does have, and I'm not standing for the government, can't be a critic at times, but in this case, I think historically we've had that challenge, and it would take a while to get over that challenge. That's one point. Second point is that the government income does not continue to increase such that, and even when the income does increase, so much should be done with that income. That's another point you need to take into consideration. There are other options like people paying. But the question is how many people can pay. And in cases, there have been a lot of regulations, and then you find out workability at times. Then at some point, you will pay, and then you get credited, or the DisCos deducts that amount from your invoice. But so many people can't even afford to pay. So it's a potpourri of various challenges in the sector around metering. And there's been a lot of metering initiatives, from the meter asset provider, you've got the national metering, you've got the presidential metering initiative. You've got those, there have been improvement, but we're not quite where we should be, because for so long there was a lot of neglect. But it's improved, particularly in Lagos. I'm fairly certain it's improved. I've got involved in one or two instances where the DisCos have then provided meters to the would-be customers or consumer. So I think that it's improved, but we're not where we should be. And lack of is a challenge. Maybe with states taking over the sector, there can be more focus around metering to make it more investor-friendly.
It's interesting that some of the DisCos that were sanctioned, a number of them already have some regulators coming up in the state as well. How is that supposed to function when you have, issues like this? You understand these infractions were committed between July and September. Do you think that there could be a conflict of rules, or will I say double jeopardy for the DisCos that are affected by this sort of charges?
I think it will be an accounting treatment. Recall that DisCos are going to set up subsidiaries in the states that have taken over the electricity market are still subsidiaries of the olden DisCo. So I think it will be an accounting treatment, and not necessarily double jeopardy. It will be an accounting treatment. If it's a particular DisCo that is now at fault, which is a part of the entire DisCo, a particular DisCo subsidiary, they will treat it on the group level, and it will be an accounting treatment. I don't think it will be double jeopardy. I don't think it will be.
For the DisCos, do you think that they have room to make a case for themselves?
I don't think so. Whether the law allows them to, fair hearing, yes, but whether NERC, and I think that's why it took a while to get to this point. They wanted to be absolutely certain that there was justification around these fines and the steps taken. That's why it took a while to get to this point. And of course, they wouldn't make this public without first checking properly. I'm one of those who criticized NERC around implementation. Brilliant regulations, orders, but implementation has been a challenge. So it would be unfair for me to then also criticize when they are doing their bit to ensure that implementation is properly done. I think that they've thought it through, and there was a process to reaching this point. DisCos may make a case. There may be situations where very limited, where that amount may be reduced, which are very much. But I think in the most, it would be that it stays as it is.
Because I'm also wondering, for a sector that is looking for an injection of fresh funding, a sector that has been struggling somewhat with funding, and part of the reasons why we're seeing all of this, will I say, delineation, band A, band B, or we've made investments in some areas, some people should pay more, and people still groaning under the, will I say, the weight of electricity bills. You now have this sort of fine being slammed on them. Do you think that it could affect their own viability in any way?
Okay, so you've got to look at it from two angles. There's unjust enrichment. From an unjust enrichment point of view, if you did not meter and you did not adequately bill and you are making assumptions, and that assumptions are not within the law, it would be unfair to not then punish. It then means you're telling everyone else, those other 3 or so that were not punished, you're then giving them the incentive to go ahead and do the same thing. So you can look at it from that angle, and you can look at it from your own angle. But I'm sure they've looked at the financials, they've taken a holistic view of the entire thing before reaching this point. You know that DisCos are required to submit their financials periodically to NERC. So I do not think this decision, whilst I'm not a part of, I do not think this decision was taken. I'm not a part of it. I do not think this decision was taken. I'm not a part of it. I do not think this decision was taken. I'm not.
Well, Dr. Oni, one question in all of these that I would love to find out from you is how this regime will be sustained with states' electricity regulatory commissions coming up. Lagos State already has one, and a number of states are already coming, up with theirs as well. Do you see this kind of regime being sustained, or do you see it sustainable? What will be the role of an NERC in this kind of situation, in the near or far future?
Okay, that's a good point. I've always said that at some point, electricity will become an electoral item. So if the states do not do enough to attract investment and ensure that there's consumer satisfaction, then those states will be in trouble, and the governors may, as long as the elections are fair, may lose their elections. Now, in terms of sustainability, those states which do not take over the electric store in their own state will continue to be under NERC. It's not automatic, and it's only about 11 or 13 states now. Other than that, remember, we've got 36 states and the FCT. FCT will remain under NERC if my analysis is correct. And you've got over 20 other states which are still under NERC and may be. So I expect that some of these states, it will be a simply learning curve for a number of them. Many of these states are just going to replicate some of what NERC is doing.
Yeah.
Because there are issues around tariffs, there are issues around subsidy. So sustainability for me, from a federal level, will remain. From a state by state, I think states would have to work out what works for them, whether they want consumer satisfaction, whether they
essentially, you're saying, Dr. Oni, my apologies for butting in again. Essentially, you're saying that this instruction from NERC is essentially just for states that are still under the authority of NERC, and not for states that have already taken over with their own state electoral regulatory commissions?
Generally speaking, yes and no. I'll say yes and no because this is for 2024. So states which hadn't done that before 2024, they would have to, everyone would have to comply. It's just how payment will be done. I think an accounting treatment. So if for example, Ekiti already had a subsidiary set up by Benin DisCos, then it will be Benin DisCos, maybe a particular subsidiary will bear the brunt. So it will depend on the accounting treatment, and I'd leave that for the accountants. But I think it would apply to everyone. But after this time, anything from that cutoff date for each state, it will not apply to those specific states because they then have the laws that govern them, separate from the Electricity Act.
So what should consumers of electricity Should they feel reassured by the move that NERC has taken on these DisCos?
Yes, I think they should to a large extent. And then they should then begin to ask the electricity regulators in their own states, for those who have taken over electricity regulation in their states, residents should begin to ask similar questions, make similar asks of those the regulator and of the DisCos. But yes, I think there's a level of reassurance, particularly if implementation is well done and NERC ensures that the DisCos do. And consumer sensitization too is critical. Let consumers know and let consumers go through the process of reporting airing DisCos.
Well, I hope that this encourages them to do so. Mr. Ayodele O'Neil, we have to thank you so much for your contributions on Sunrise Daily this morning. He is an energy expert and has been speaking to us virtually.